Hi guys, it's Vivs here from Design Coder. In the previous video, we talked about how to share our project on GitHub. In this video, before we take a look at the structure of our project and the different files in it, I would like to walk you guys through the settings in Android Studio. Let's go here to Android Studio and we can go right there and select Preferences. Immediately we are taken to this screen that has several options. Now most of these settings are pretty good and they are set at default values that work good with Android Studio and for our use cases. So I'll be going through the most important settings to customize Studio. So first, under Appearance and Behavior, I'll go to System Settings and there is this option that says Startup Shutdown and it says Confirm Application Exit. I don't want Android Studio asking me every time if I like to exit. So I'm going to remove that option, click Apply at the bottom. Under System Settings, there is this option called Passwords and it says Password Storage Policy. If you try to connect with say GitHub like you saw in the previous video or something else that requires a password, Android Studio will ask you to put a master password. And I'm not going to enable this option because I already have a password manager with me. So I will say do not remember passwords over here. Now if you're using the internet from behind a proxy, then inside System Settings under HTTP proxy, this is where you will have to manually configure your proxy settings. If you want to update your Android Studio or control how it updates itself, then under Updates, under System Settings, this is where you will see automatic check updates for stable channel. Now there are 4 channels of Android Studio, which basically are 4 different places where you find the updates for Android Studio. Stable channel is the one that is fully working. Beta is where you will find beta releases, and there is dev and canary. Now the earliest new version of Android Studio comes under the canary channel and from there it progresses to the stable channel. And there is this option as well that says check now and you will get this pop-up which says you have the latest version of Android Studio installed. If you don't get that, make sure that you update your Android Studio over here. Then the option called Android SDK under System Settings has a list of all the Android versions that are installed on my system. If you want to install more, you can just launch the standalone SDK manager and from there you can install the other versions of Android. Launching the standalone SDK manager would launch this area with all the versions in it and make sure that you have the extras at the bottom set up. The next important setting in Android Studio is called the key map on the left hand side. This includes all the keyboard shortcuts that you want inside Android Studio. These shortcuts that you see currently here are for editor actions. If you expand main menu, you would find shortcuts under code for how to generate a constructor and so on. Now you'll have to explore all these shortcuts and remember one more thing. The symbols that you see here on the right hand side will be based on your operating system. For example, let me show you how to generate a constructor which is under code and this option here that says generate, which is Command N for the shortcut. I will close this dialog by clicking OK over there, go back to our test class here and simply keep my cursor anywhere on the screen and hit Command N. Immediately I get the option to generate copyright. Okay, so if I go within the class by keeping the cursor inside, I hit Command N and I get the option to generate a constructor. Let's select that option, select the field, click OK, and we have a constructor for the class test. Let's take a look at the next important setting, which is editor on the left hand side. Notice it has an arrow on the left indicating that it can be expanded. Under editor, we have several settings. Let's take a look at one of these settings called use soft wraps in editor. Now let me show you what happens without soft wraps. Click OK, and if you take a look at my myActivity.java, I have a long comment over here. And in fact, the comment is so long that it stretches straight outside the screen. Take a look at that. I have to horizontally scroll all the way to the end of the screen to see that comment. I can make that comment appear on multiple lines inside my Android Studio, but not inside the actual file. And that is why it's called a soft wrap. So let's go back to Android Studio, Preferences, and let's try to enable that setting and see how it changes. Use soft wraps in editor, click Apply, click OK. And if you take a look at the comment now, take a look at this. It has been split into 2 lines, but this is just for your purpose in Android Studio. If you open the file mainActivity.java with a notepad or text edit, you would notice that there is no such separation inside the file. Now if you expand general, there is a section called auto import on the left. Here, one of the sections would be to optimize imports on the fly. This would simply mean remove unwanted imports. I'll click apply over there once again. Go to appearance, the most important setting of all, show line numbers. Once I click over there, click apply, click OK, and you'll start seeing line numbers permanently inside all the files. So right there in general under console, I'm going to use soft wraps in the console as well. And I'll jump to the next setting, editor tabs, where I will use this option which says mark modified tabs with asterisks. If I select this, click apply, click OK, let me show you what happens. There is test.java right here. And if I go and do something here, notice that there is an asterisk here indicating that this file has been modified. I would like to keep it, which is why I selected that option. The next important setting would be under editor called colors and fonts. Let's minimize general or collapse it. Go to colors and fonts, and immediately you notice that there is something called a scheme over here. There are two schemes here. Darkula would make everything dark, whereas default would keep everything white. Now there is this button called save as. In other words, if you want to save something like your own font size, you need to make a copy of this theme and then edit it. It doesn't let you edit the default theme. Let me show you what I mean. If you go to colors and fonts, expand it, go to font here. Let's say I want to change the font size. Notice that there is no cursor letting me change that. First, I need to save a default theme. I'll call it Vibs here. Click OK. And now that I have made a copy of the default theme, I will simply increase the font size to say 18 and the line spacing to say 1.4. Click apply, click OK. And coming back to Studio, this is what we see in the settings. The same way, if you notice, there is this Android monitor area at the bottom, which has very small font. Let me change that as well. Go to Studio, Preferences, and back to the same part where we are under colors and fonts under console font. Over here, I will increase the size to say 14 and increase the line spacing to say 1.2. Click apply and OK to close the dialog. And this time if I go to the bottom, notice that the font size and spacing has changed. The other settings under colors and fonts would let you control the foreground and background color of each item, like an identifier, a method name, etc. I will close that over here. Go to the next section, which is code style. This again lets you control spacing. For example, if you select Java here, you notice that a tab is 4 spaces, indent is 4, continuation indent is 8, and so on. It is pretty good at default values, and hence we are not going to modify anything in this section as well. The next section, inspections, would deal with when your IDE or Android Studio should indicate a warning versus an error. Again, the defaults are pretty good for this, and hence I won't be customizing that. File and code templates would show you what happens when you create a file. For example, when you create a new class file, it has a package name and a class name by default inside it. You can customize this to include something else if you want. Again, the defaults are good, so I'm going to leave it untouched. The next section that we are going to deal with happens to be my favorite, called live templates. This lets you put a lot of code by using some shortcut. Let me show you what I mean. For example, if you go here, you notice that there is a section called iterations. If you expand it, it says for I, create an iteration for loop. Let me show you how that works. If you go back to our class test over here, let's go inside the constructor, and all I have to do is write for I, hit a tab, and look at that. The for loop is created for us. Like this, we can insert many pieces of code using the template provided inside live templates. The live templates not only cover Java, but they also cover Android. Be sure to go through the complete list of live templates, and let me show you a simple example of an Android XML based live template. Now here there is something called LWM and LWW. When we work with a layout file in XML, I will show you what this width and max parent simply means. Let's click OK for now, and let's go back to our text view here. You notice that there is a layout width that says wrap content and height that says wrap content. Let me remove these two statements and simply write LWW and hit a tab. Notice that it says layout width is wrap content. Same way, if I write LHW and press tab, it says layout height is wrap content. I can insert these values using the template provided over there. Let's take a look at the next most interesting area under settings. It would be plugins. Now plugins are simply third-party software or pieces of code that make your life easier with Android Studio. For example, if you go here to browse repositories, let me show you what happens with a plugin versus without one. Click OK for now. Let's go back to Android Studio. Let's go here to the left hand side where we have this folder called drawable. Drawable simply means something that can be drawn. It can be icons, images, etc. and many other things. Let's right click over here and say new. Notice that there are two options here, one that says image asset, vector asset. Now if you want to add icons or images inside your Android app, you usually put them here in the drawable folder. Let me put a plugin for this. Let me show you what the plugin does. You go to Android Studio, Preferences, and you go straight here to Browse Repositories. And from here, we can just browse for it, which is called Android Drawable Importer over here. Notice that we have the option that says install over there. Let's click install on that. Once it has finished downloading, you get the option that says restart Android Studio. Let's click on that option, click apply, okay. And at the top, you get this option saying platform and plugin updates restart. Now after restarting, let's go to the left side here to the drawable part, right click and say new. Notice that we have some options here that say multi-source drawable, packed drawable import, icon packed drawable importer. Let's try this icon packed drawable importer, and it lets us import icons. Oh, there's a huge list of icons over here. Let's try importing this alarm icon over here. Icon pack, Android icons, asset, IC_action alarm. The size is pre-selected as per material design size rules for images. And the color is black over here. We can change that to say blue light. And it gives us the list of all the resources we need. We can just click OK over here. And look at this. Our staging area of Git pops up and says you want to add all these files to Git. Click OK. Take a look at the drawable folder now. We have all the icons added as per the proper size straight in one shot. This usually involves a lot of copy paste operations, but this plugin has made it very simple. And this is how you use plugins. If you're not sure of how to use a plugin, you can always Google its name and type out how to use it. So feel free to explore the plugins and let me know in the discussions which one do you find really interesting. Let's go to the next section, version control, where it currently shows that our project is under Git version control. You can control the login credentials for GitHub from over here by setting your username and password for GitHub and also test the connection. You can go to Git part here, check where your Git is installed on your system and link the git.exe or executable over here to the path to Git executable and test that as well. If I click test, it says Git executed successfully, version is 2.4.9. The next setting would be something called build, execution and development. Under this, if you take a look, there's build tools, under which there is Gradle. Now Gradle is a system that builds your app together. In other words, it compiles, runs stuff, links files, etc. and does all that kind of stuff. Here there's an option that says offline work. In other words, if you want to run this without the internet on, you can select this option, click apply and click OK. Let's go to a very important feature here called instant run. The other options are pretty set up at their default values. Click on instant run. Notice it says enable instant run and it says restart activity on code changes. Let me select this option which says restart activity on code changes, apply, click OK. Now what this instant run means is that once you run your app on an emulator, let's say I have Genymotion right now, and I can just add something here. Let's add a toast by saying toast tab, use our shortcut here and say this is a message. Once I write this and click run at the top, so there's my app running and this is a message is printed out here. Now here's the part about instant run. Now if I go and add another toast here, let's say toast same way and say this is another message. This time I save it, I click run again. And notice that it runs immediately where this is another message is also printed. In other words, you can edit code over here as you want and click run at the top and it will immediately run with those changes. And that's why you had the option that said restart activity after making changes. Settings like languages and frameworks that deals with your DTD files for your XML stuff. Tools that includes access to your web browsers where you can configure which browsers you want to work with. The terminal where you can link it, or command prompt if you're on Windows, I believe, and a few other settings about certificates, settings, and startup work that you want to run. The other settings includes the Genymotion setting here, where you will link the folder or path containing genymotion.app where you install Genymotion to link with this. And that would cover our settings. So in this video, we have talked about the settings in Android, and hopefully you guys have learned a trick or two from this. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a nice day.